Off you go.
Thanks, Kia. What I'm going to do today is say a little bit about me, and then I'm going to explore some technologies currently available to help us live in smart homes. Explore a little bit about them, do a little bit of computer science, then explore how we might think about what a smart home is, how we might shape our thoughts around what smart home is. But I also want to foreshadow something which is, although I might have originally been a professor of sociology 20 years, 30 years ago, actually I find the most interesting thing is to actually build something. When you build something, not only is it a difficult but enjoyable task when it works, it also tests your propositions. And I'm not a sociologist who's just critical. The whole point of looking at, say, smart homes is to build technologies for smart homes. Whether you call them smart, perhaps, is another issue. If they make home life better in some way, that's my ambition. So I end up with some devices which we built and tested, and I end up also with a little video which will kind of tease, which is a bit playful, or something we actually built. But so I might be critical, but that's not the way of thinking about what I'm doing. So let me go off the Zoom dialog boxes. I think I have to escape on. Here we go. So, just to give an idea, I'm now unmuted. Someone needs to unmute me.
No, but maybe you put your sound on.
I have arranged it.
Okay. So I've written lots of books, many books. I just live in a few examples of them. A book on choice and how we think about choice. That's obviously relevant to lots of arguments in artificial intelligence. Long ago, I wrote a book called Inside the Smart Home. I've written another book on the smart home called The Connected Home. I've written an edited collection, which was a pretty unpleasant experience. Trying to get philosophers to actually abide by what you ask them to do is like pulling teeth, I must say. I asked them to write about philosophy and trust in computing. And there's some great papers in that. I wrote a book on texture, which is probably the one I'm most proud of in terms of expressing my research. And then a book made a reputation on the myth of the paperless office, but lots of other books too. What I'm actually talking about today is for my latest book, and I imagine, given my age, probably the last book. And it's called The Shape of Thought. And it's basically about how we shape our thinking for different kinds of situations. And I'm going to start this off by making comments about being an Englishman in Stockholm. This is a picture of your underground, or tube as we would call it in England. And one of the things that I found very difficult, although I was reflecting on it this morning, I don't find it difficult anymore, is that when you first get on the tube in Stockholm, and when you first go into shops in Stockholm, you don't do something which this lady's doing now. This lady's looking at me. Now, on the tube in Stockholm, no Swede looks at anybody else. Nobody catches your eye. Nobody glances at you. Now, what does that matter? Well, in London, when you go on the tube, you're standing very close to a guy, you just glance into it and you notice that he's noticed you and you're moving closely, so he moves away. So you have this little dance to do with glancing, and you glance to see whether you should move or not move. But in Sweden, nobody does that. So what did I do the first week I was on the tube? I kept bumping into people because I'm waiting for them to, I'm moving onto the underground with my bag, thinking, I'm a big fellow, I'm not small, so I'm going to take up some space. Is the lady in front of me going to notice me? Well, I expect her to look up and give the impression she has noticed and make a decision. She notices me and does nothing, which is often the case. I move around. But in Sweden, that doesn't happen. On the tube in Sweden, I had to adjust my behavior. Now, why am I mentioning this? What I'm trying to say here, there's a moral here about technology and AI in particular, and especially deep learning systems. Deep learning systems are incredibly effective. They might use an awful lot of computational power. They might struggle with graphics cards, but the patterns that they work on are determinable, and they can be inferred from data. They presuppose there's a pattern, which also means that those systems cannot adapt. They cannot find a pattern they've not been trained for. Deep learning is fragile in that regard. It's very good at delivering inferred patterns of patterns that are known. It's not so good at inferring patterns that are not known. As it happens, this is well understood in the deep learning community. Even people like Jeff Hinton admit that deep learning might be a dead end. So what they're doing now with GPT-3A and things like that is what they've relabeled generative deep learning. And the idea is that generative deep learning combines various deep learning pattern-seeking inference engines to produce something new. I'm not sure they're successful, but I'm going to come back to that at the end of my talk. So bear that in mind. So what are smart homes, smart technologies? They're kind of two basic kinds. Ones that support things in the house. They intelligently manage our heating. Most of you have probably got these Google apps. They're quite nice. They're very straightforward, very simple to engineer. Some people have these delightfully amusing autonomous vacuum cleanings, which our cat used to love, but we've given up with that now. And then you have more technology, more AI, not for the home, but to let you escape the home in search engines and so forth. But the important thing is that what we have in terms of artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence which is quite narrow, quite specific. You don't get digital butlers. You don't have robots with English accents going around saying, would you like tea, sir? Can I do your laundry for you? Can I pick up the chaos from last night's drinking? That's an aspiration, but certainly not an achievement. But what shapes the thoughts of smart home researchers? Two agendas, I think. And the first is, what can we do now? And the second one, this one, most of you are familiar with the claims about generalized intelligence, which is a manifestation of the related argument about generative AI. I just want to look at current smart technologies before I come back to that one. Let's look at an example, a delightful example, a fun example, and a lightweight example of some heavyweight technology. If you think that language processing, natural language processing is a heavyweight technology, it certainly is in terms of the years that have gone into teaching deep learning algorithms and inference engines. But when you buy it, when you buy an Echo and speak to Alexa, it doesn't seem like a big bit of kit. So with Alexa, all of you know what it does. I presume you can talk to it, it'll do things for you. Amongst other things, its appeal is it does offers what's called a natural interaction. And by natural interaction, this is one of those misbegotten phrases computer scientists use. Because people speak to each other, computer scientists think that's natural interaction, but we do many things when we're with each other. I stand at a certain distance. Is my distance, my proxemic relationship with this gentleman also natural? How do you know what is natural? It's a funny phrase, but speaking seems to be natural. So therefore, things like Alexa offers you an easy mode of interaction, a natural mode of interaction. And with Alexa, you can ask it to do something for you. You can ask it to search. You can ask it to search and buy. It offers you this. If you ask, buy me something, buy me a Christmas tree, Alexa will offer you a bunch of Christmas trees. But studies of users say they don't seem to be very happy about something. They don't seem to like long spoken lists. So they seem to interrupt Alexa before she, if I can call it a she, finishes the lists. Why? Is that a problem of Alexa or is that a problem of the user? Well, I'm going to explore this a little bit more, but to foreshadow what I'm trying to say, it's a conversational rule of ordinary life that users prefer to agree and they prefer the conversation to move on. So if someone starts offering a long list, the recipient, the person listening, gets a little bit embarrassed and says, no, I'll have that one, because otherwise there's a kind of inelegance about it. Now, is this a rule? Well, Harvey Sachs, who discovered this, just used lots of examples to show basically it's a kind of morality. You try and have balance in turn taking. And one consequence of that is that when Alexa starts offering a long list, you stop her and you ask for one of the early items in the list. Now, what does that mean? Well, the technology device state-of-the-art natural language processing and it does what's called best fit. So when I ask for a Christmas tree, it doesn't ask for it doesn't assume some particular Christmas tree. It means general Christmas trees. It doesn't say large, small, it just generalizes from it. The best fit is pretty good for most consequences. Sometimes Lexa comes up with really weird things for you. So when I ask for a Christmas tree, it might offer me theatre tickets for a play called Christmas Tree. But mostly, it doesn't fail. The crucial issue I wanted to highlight here is that Alexa is a smart technology. The problem is not with the technology. The problem is with the user behavior. And what I want to suggest from the user's behavior is you can understand it by thinking about the user from the technology's point of view. Now, those of you who do data structures in computer science might be vexed by my summary of some aspects of how data is stored on the computer, but bear with me, it's a metaphorical argument. There's an analogy I'm wanting to suggest between data structures in computing and speech-driven search inquiries. Here are some data structures. You have a list. A list is just a long list, and a list is organized in all sorts of ways, most often alphabetically. Lists are often joined with other lists, and they have another order, often again alphabetically. That's one way of storing data. Another way of storing data in a computer is to stack. A stack in, first out. You just stack on top. What that means to the computer is if you ask a computer to retrieve from the stack, it takes the first out. I mean, not first, the last out. The reason why you have different arrangements for data storage in computers is all about speed, all about efficiency, all about what the computer is trying to do, not really about where the data is stored. Another type of data store is an array, and an array allows the computer to see all the instances at the same time. This is computationally quite burdensome, but sometimes useful. What is a spoken dialogue search query with Alexa like? If it is like a data stack, I think it's like a stack procedure. I don't want to listen to a lot. I just want a quick answer. So in effect, I want what's last in is likely to be the first out. Now, if that is the case, who is in control of what is last in, first out? It's Amazon. When Amazon offers a set of targets, or SERPs as they're called in search engine research, it's going to offer items that it has some preferential deal with. The first 5 in a search from Alexa are Amazon promoted goods. Amazon knows that you're probably going to listen to 3 or 4, but you're not going to listen to 20. So if they sell those 3 or 4 first ones, first in, first out, stack type items, they make money. Now, just to help understand this example, traditional graphical user interfaces for search engines can be thought of as an array. When you see a search engine results page, it presents a number of different targets, either from top to bottom or left to right in carding. But in either case, you can think of it like an array. What I'm saying now is that when I interact, or when people interact with Alexa, they're interacting with a stack-like procedure. It's taking me. This is where it's taking me. Is this intelligence? Is the system intelligent? Yes, but the question is, who's intelligent? It's good for Amazon. It's not necessarily good for the user. In a sense, the user is being lazy. So am I about to say that people who have Amazon are foolish? No. Does it matter? But you can be whoever you want at home. Why does it matter if you want to be lazy? Why does it matter if you use a search engine which doesn't search? It just gives you the top of the stack. And the top of the stack provides the seller with a little bonus. Surely you can be whoever you want to be at home. What's the problem with smart technology, which is smart for the technology, but not necessarily smart for your pocket? So what is a smart home? What is a home? Is it the smartness of the technology that makes a home smart? Or the smartness of the user? Or is it a sum of the both? So if you have Alexa, which is smart for Amazon, and you have a lazy user, a home occupier, do you put them together, and where does it put them? Or some other criteria? How do we shape our thinking to think about smart homes? Don't forget, my book that I'm writing is called The Shape of Thought, and it's about how we shape our ways to think about things. And now we're going to go into, I think, some bit more fun. My view about people is that we can be lazy. I'm a late middle-aged man. I don't bother fixing lots of kit because I have teenage boys. They get on with it. I don't worry about it. But we can also be fastidious. We can be artful. I'd like to propose that we express that in the way we make our home. Our home is our material arrangements which express who we are. Now, we are, let's put it, we are what our homes say about us. Clearly, that's kind of a bit of a constraint for some people. But homes say many things. When I say it's a constraint, at my age, I have more income than I did when I was 20. So when I was romancing, say, and I mention this because you see pictures of my wife shortly, the home that was expressing me was a tatty bedsit. But that's the best I could do. So I would tidy it up and make it look as if I was going to be affluent. Today, my circumstances are different. So you can see some of the circumstances which say different sorts of things. Two of those images are in my life. So we are our homes. But, okay, when I was 20, I wanted to express who I might be, who I was. What about what we were yesterday? Do we have to manage how we express ourselves in the home? So if the home expresses me, what's the me that's being expressed? The me that is today? Or the me that rented the home or bought the home? The me that moved in 10 years ago? And if we have to balance things like who we were with who we are, God, what a lot of hassle. And one of the reasons why people like Alexa is because when you're at home, I can't be bothered. Let Amazon make 10p, whatever, 10 kroner, and I get the same product. I don't really care. But at home, there's so many problems, so many tasks. And all of us live in homes where you'll find these sorts of things. I want to suggest that these sorts of things, in fact, I've written a paper on this with colleagues, bowls, drawers with tiddlers pulling them out, embarrassing cupboards, they are ways of dealing with who you are. In the sense that they're saying, oh, bloody hell, I can't sort that one out. I don't know where to put it. I don't know whether to keep it. If I throw it away, is that saying I don't care about what I was doing 5 years ago because I might pick it up again in the future? I was doing that hobby, but I don't know. So what do? You just hide it or put it away. You put it in funny sorts of places. You use clutter bowls. And what about us? The old and the new. How do you celebrate that? So on the top left, there's a picture of me 10 years after my marriage. That's a picture of me now. What does my wife want to have on the wall? What do you think? This is my wife when we got married. I'm very proud of this picture. It's not allowed at home. Why? Because it reminds her that she's quite a lot older now. To me, she's still the beautiful woman I married, but that's not what she sees. So this picture is banned from my home. I cannot celebrate the partnership I'm part of. We have to manage those things. Now, it gets worse. What happens when you settle down? Oh my God, it gets worse. You make a home with your partner, whoever your partner is, and what do you do with your partner? You make some new members. This is my tiddler. This is my little one, obviously a long time ago now. And aren't they lovely when they turn up? Yeah, aren't they lovely? And then what happens? This was him when he first went to school, grand school, Eton, first day putting on his bow tie. He was lovely. He was an absolute perfect boy, doted father on him. And then 3 years later, when he was 16, he wouldn't let his mother near him. If she touched him, he would go bright red. Guess what? He turned into a teenager. Right. So what's the moral here? Well, the moral is homes are many things. These are my other two children. The older two, I could say the same, but with slightly different colorations with those two. Both a handful, especially my daughter who's the eldest. So the moral is here, if there is a moral, is we make home for ourselves, but we make a home and create people in it whose goal is to leave home. So what is a home? Does the home express me? Or does the home express the children I've made who want to get away from home? For me, home is where I go to, but my boys and my daughter want to leave home. So the orientation to the thing that is home are opposite. So Who is the home for? How does it express? And who for? Now, I think we're starting to shape our thoughts about what we might think technologies for the home might need to let us do. Now, the key thing I'm trying to convey here is that if home are organs we're trying to express identity, then part of the problem is how you manage the expression of identity requires constant, gentle, sometimes cruel adjustments. You keep having to change. Change occurs over time. It happens in who is represented in the home, who is a member. Changes in identities. Remember what I said about deep learning systems. Can AI do that? Can deep learning systems do that? Can it learn from our domestic patterns? Yes, it can, if I was a single person in a house and I never changed. But what have I just suggested? That the problem with a home, any home, everyone's home, is they do constantly change. It's in their nature to change, and they change in willful ways. Think of teenagers. In unpredictable ways. Think of changes in finance. In sad, baleful ways, think about the nature of aging. Can it deal with contradictory patterns? Can AI allow a teenager to do something like close the door on a parent? Years ago, why was Facebook immensely popular amongst adolescents? Why did it become like a contagion? Because adolescents are at that moment in life when they want to close the door on mum and dad. But closing the door on mum and dad is actually quite a difficult thing to do. But with Facebook, you can just not give mum and dad an invite. So you can create a virtual door to stop mum and dad participating in life. And if you looked at what adolescents did on their Facebooks, all they did was talk to their friends from school who were doing just the same thing. They were just chit-chatting like 13-year-olds do about nothing, whinging about parents, whinging about possible partners, whinging about teachers, complaining about their terrible predicament. Trivial stuff, but they kept mum and dad out. Can AI technologies do that? Not currently, I don't think. So what do we do with technology? I believe we should let us be smart, and I think the smartness should not be in the technology. The smartness should be about letting us be us. That's a complicated thing. It's about our relationships. It's about how we express, to whom we express, and what manner. That's how I think we should shape our thoughts if you're designing the smart home. So I'll give you some examples of things that we built when I was at Microsoft Research. And this is a few years old now. But what we were interested there was that if home is a place with lots of different members, instead of having a Facebook, which is only accessible on your laptop, why can't you have a social media posting place in the kitchen? And we built this thing called an epigraph. And in this case, the family had 5 members, and each member of the family, from the tiddler up to dad, had a window that they could post to, like an Instagram. And you could send messages, you could post content. And we did trials of it, and people liked it. The kinds of things they objected to was that they didn't like the glowing light, they wanted to turn it off, they wanted to do other things with it. So because it was an appliance, I don't know if you know what that means, it wasn't successful, it didn't have enough functionality to it. But they all really liked the idea of being able to post to the family and to having a presence in the kitchen, especially parents who are working away. They wanted to post content about where they were, what they were doing. They wanted an Instagram that didn't go to the digital ether. They wanted an Instagram to their family. Here's another one, which is equally simple, and that's of course a bit, but this is called a bubble board. And one of the things we were trying to explore was the tenderness that can be evoked with things like, it's a coffee machine. When people leave messages, sometimes they leave rather beautiful, elegant voice messages. Sometimes voice messages are viewed as treasures by the one who's received them. I had some voice messages from my eldest boy, Oliver, and he's still got a very high-pitched little voice, and he's just dad, and I've kept it on my phone because to me it's a little treasure. So we thought one of the things you might have in the kitchen is a visual answering board, a visual answering messaging service. And when you come home and people have phoned to the landline, or was then a possibility then, and someone left a message, there'll be a message icon here with a picture if you're in an address book, and you play the message. If you like the message, you could drag it over here and it'd be on a notice board. And you could put other messages, you could send messages to this notice board via SMS, and they could be stuck there. So the idea was that you would have a digital notice board in the kitchen, and some of these messages might last years and years. One of the things we found, as unsurprising, is that not everybody agrees as to what should go on there. So my boys, for example, wanted to delete all the messages from them, even though I said, that's so sweet, because oh, Dad, I hate it. I don't like this. They'll drag it and put it down the pigeonhole. They're in the sink. This is another one. This is one we put most of in. It's not a very good image. I'm sorry about that. I couldn't find it last night. This is a device about the size of that. And we built this, it's called Home Note. And it's meant to look a little bit like a Post-it note. And on this messaging application, you would write with a stylus, and there's a little dialog box, and you could send it effectively like an email message. And the email message would go anywhere. And the email message could be a bitmap, could be the image, or you could convert it into text. You could use a little bit of AI to do character recognition. Or you could take a picture and you could use crayons. And we proposed that this might be a kitchen messaging platform for families to message each other, and that it might reflect some of the modes of behavior in the kitchen. You don't really want keyboards, you're in a rush. The stylus might be easy. At first, people that we tried this with didn't like it, especially the men at work. But after 2 or 3 weeks, what we found was that kids discovered that there's a camera here, and they could take a picture of themselves, and then they could use this crayon to do colorations around themselves and make them look like little angels or so forth. And they would send these pictures of themselves with no content except a picture of themselves made playful to their dads. And those pictures would arrive in Dad's Outlook in tray at work, and suddenly their little one is there on the screen. And as soon as that happened, all the dads said, we want this application. I want to pay for this. And we worked with Hallmark in the USA, who said that this was going to be their future. We did, and I hate to mention this, define, though, a difference between the dad's reactions and mum's reactions. Mothers in the homes we studied in the Midwest and in England didn't like the children having too much control of the messaging platform because they thought it was undermining some of the ways of managing the kitchen. There were other issues afoot in terms of how you might message in the home that we didn't have time to explore for reasons nothing to do with the success of the technology, but to do with mobile networks and who was going to pay for the traffic. This product didn't get developed, although it's one I spent most of my career on. So, AI, deep learning, yes, absolutely. The question is where you put it. Not as our butler, not as a generalized AI. I can't think why people even think that's a useful thing. You don't want AI to replicate this. Why would I want a robot to be a simulacra of me in my home? My home is about me. I'd quite like to have a robot, but I don't want the robot to be me. My problem is being me at home. It's bad enough doing that, let alone having to deal with a robot. We have to be us. Right, I started with the problem of glancing, and I'm going to finish now with a little video and application we built. And one of the things we were trying to explore and to suggest to our sponsors was when you message, one of the charms of messaging is the different ways in which a message is experienced. So many years ago, when I first met Kira, in fact, I did a presentation to Vodafone, the Vodafone board, trying to explain to them why SMS was very successful and popular. And they were convinced it was because it was cheaper than voice messaging or voice calling. And we said to them, it's because SMS arrives in the pocket and it persists. It's like a gift. And if it's like a gift, that opens up the possibility of you might think differently about all sorts of messaging formats. It's not just to send and receive. It might do all sorts of things. It might also be different ways of sending and receiving. And one of the things, many years later, when I was working with Outlook, we try to persuade them. One of the things you do is when you get someone's attention, I've done with this gentleman several times, and occasionally with the lady over here, a glance. Now, what I'm doing when I'm glancing, I'm seeing if they're listening in this instance. But when you communicate, sometimes you glance to see if someone's likely to respond. I said, why can't you make a glance phone? So we built a glance phone, and all a glance phone is, it's a phone with a little application in it. Let me show you it. What he's done is put the phone in glance phone mode. And all the idea there is is that with glancing, if you put your phone in, when you're busy in the desk, when I'm in Kia's offices or like a library, there's no sound at all. So I want to be available, but I don't necessarily want my phone to ring. So if I had a glance phone functionality, with your glance phone, you put it on your desk and others can glance at you and it doesn't ring. It doesn't show in the video, but we set it up so it would just whisper your name. So say, Richard, I'm glancing. And it would say he was glancing. And they would just take a single bitmap and one image, and they could see whether you're available or not. In that instance, the designer was wanting to be playful, but the point was you could express anything in the glance. You could react in the way that Swedes don't. You could say something in a glance. You could adapt your next act. And adaptability is the problem for smart home technology, but it's also the essential motivation and problem that people inside homes have. When you make a home, you constantly have to adapt it to it and yourself. And as it adapts and as you adapt to it, so you change too. It's a dance of constantly changing phenomena. And that's the problem for AI, but it's also, I think, the opportunity for AI when it shapes its thought to think properly about what you might want to do in the smart home of the future. And that's me finished.